Good evening, everyone. Welcome. My name is Joe Davidge. I'm the Executive Director here at the Georgia Center for the Book. And on behalf of the Georgia Center for the Book, the DeKalb County Public Library, and the DeKalb Library Foundation, welcome to another in our continuing series of virtual events. We're so pleased to present this event to you this evening, and we do have a few partners I'd like to mention. We will be putting a link for Eagle Eye Books over in the chat here in a minute. I am doing the tech myself tonight, so give me a moment to get all of this stuff together for you all. But you can order a copy of both Daniel's book and Julian's book this evening from Eagle Eye Books if you wish to do that. Eagle Eye Books is one of the many independent bookstores we have in the metropolitan area, and they've done so much during the pandemic by mailing books to customers, providing curbside pickup, and some of our stores even brought books to people's doorstep. So wherever you are, I would encourage you to purchase these books from a local independent bookstore, especially Black-owned independent bookstores and businesses, because they are so vital to our economy and our literary livelihoods. I would like to remind you also that we have live transcription enabled for our hearing impaired guests this evening. You can locate the CC button at the top or the bottom of your screen, depending on your device. And once you do that, you will open a small window and you can resize the font to suit your very needs. Also, I would like to say that if you'd like to ask a question after our formal presentation, please do so by using the Q&A feature. You'll find the Q&A button at the top or the bottom of your screen. Please click on it and feel free to type your question and we'll answer and ask them in turn. Right now, I'd like to introduce our guests to you this evening. Julian Winters is the author of the IBPA Benjamin Franklin Gold Award-winning Running with Lions and the Junior Library Guild selections, How to Be Remy Cameron, and The Summer of Everything. A self-proclaimed comic book geek, Julian currently lives outside of Atlanta, and he's had his shots for that, where he can both be found reading and watching the only two sports he can follow, volleyball and soccer. His forthcoming book, Right Where I Left You, comes out on March 15th, and we are very, very pleased to be hosting his launch event live and in person on the Decatur Library parking deck. So we are doing outdoors events coming up this spring, just as a test case. Daniel Black is a native of Kansas City, Kansas, yet spent the majority of his childhood years in Blackwell, Arkansas. He's a professor of African American Studies and English at his alma mater, Clark Atlanta University, where he now aims to provide an example to young Americans of the importance of self-knowledge and communal commitment. He is a nationally renowned author and award-winning novelist of 7 books, including The Coming, Perfect Peace, They Tell Me of a Home, and The Sacred Place. His works are inspired by African American life, history, and heritage in the South, encompassing themes of race, religion, and sexuality. He was nominated for the Townsend Prize for Fiction, the Ernest J. Gaines Award, the Lambda Literary Award, and the Georgia Author of the Year Award. He is the recipient of the Distinguished Writers Award from the Mid-Atlantic Writers Association. Of course, the book we're talking about is Daniel's new one, Don't Cry for Me, which is an insightful, empathetic, and heartfelt novel that illuminates the life experiences of a Black father and queer sons. And it's poetic, painful, and powerful. And I can't wait for the two gentlemen to introduce this work to you tonight. So right now, I would like to turn it over to Julian Winters. Julian?
Thank you, Joe. Thanks for having us. I am very excited to be in conversation about this book, which I'm going to try to get through the whole session without getting emotional about, but you can read a description of a book and think that you're going to take one thing from it. But when you open those pages and it starts to reveal to you things that you have done so well at keeping hidden, so many wounds that you've done so well at ignoring and trying to move through this world with, this book I wasn't ready for. So I hope that I can get through talking about it without feeling any type of wave of emotion. Okay, but before we start talking about it, I kind of want to let you read a little from the book, Daniel, and so people can get just a sample of the gloriousness, the emotion, the power that this book has.
Well, first of all, let me just say an amazing thank you to you, Julian. seriously at my brother just for reading this book, for finding it worthy enough to be in conversation with me about it. I'm really enormously thrilled. And thank you to Georgia Center for the book for sponsoring this event. These events are so very, very important, especially in pandemic times when people are desperately needing outlets, intellectual and emotional outlets. These kinds of moments do lots and lots and lots of amazing work. So I'm going to read just a little bit from a section of this text, and then we'll jump in and start talking about it. February 10th, 2004. I can see the old ship of Zion now, easing across the water, coming quietly for me. You are in the prime of your life, loving some man freely, I suppose, but yourself mostly, I pray. If not, start doing it. Time waits for no man, Granddaddy used to say, and this is true. When you read this, I'll be in the next world. Don't cry for me, son. I've cried enough for myself. And have no regret about us. There is nothing for which you are to blame, unless you've now made your own mistakes and hurt others, which you probably have. Every man has. But most of those hurts, at least many of them, are blooms of seeds I planted in you. You must learn to uproot unwanted seeds without destroying the entire harvest. This is the sun's lesson. Nurture good seeds, Isaac. Toss weeds aside and never think of them again. Just remember that sprouts and weeds are planted together, and weeds have a valuable function. They teach you what to avoid, what not to embrace. There is no good planting without them. All I think of now is you. This means I love you. I feel it in my heart, that sense that nothing and no one else matters. I've always wanted to know that feeling, and now I do. The sad thing is that you won't hear me say, I'm sorry. But I did say it, Isaac. Perhaps in this letter you'll feel it, hear it in my tone, and let my words love you better than I ever did. Just one last request. Tell people I tried. If there is a funeral, and if you attend it, please tell them I tried. You are free to say I failed too, for in so many ways that is the gospel truth. But at least I tried. Recall, if you will, the few joys we shared, you, your mother, and tell them I left you the house although you didn't want it. Tell them about our trip to the land, how you loved it and later painted it more beautifully than I had remembered. Tell them you graduated from college debt-free because I paid the tuition. Tell them I wasn't always a good father, but I was always a man. And if at all possible, take me home. Whether in a casket or a vase, take me home. Don't leave me in Kansas City. Honeysuckles don't bloom here in springtime. Neighbors don't drop by if they haven't seen you in a while. This is not my home. I can't stay here. Lay me next to my brother beneath the little tree in the cemetery. I'll have peace then. If what black people say is true, I'll meet Esau again and never long for this world. I'll meet my mother too, and hopefully, I'll meet my mother too, and hopefully she'll treat me the way your mother treated you. I'll confront Granddaddy about what he did, and maybe he'll apologize, and we'll all be happy in eternity. I'll tell Grandma that her dream came true. Her great grandson got a college education, but she probably already knows. This is all I have to say. If this isn't enough, I have nothing else to give. And finally, I leave you this charge alone. Live your life freely, Isaac. Rise above our history and be your unapologetic self. Just remember that I meant well. Even in my failure, I truly meant well.
Mm, mm. Thank you for reading that, especially that section. It hits so many different aspects of this book that I loved. But it also is just a small taste of Jacob's journey, of his family's journey, of Isaac's journey, and just the way that you capture emotion is just, whew, I don't even know how you did it. So let's start from the beginning. How did you do it? You have a wonderful author's note in the beginning of the book that kind of gives a little bit of the background. But for those who haven't picked it up yet or haven't read that note yet, can you tell us the origins of where this book came from? And what were you thinking when you first sat down to write it?
Well, the truth is, when I started this book, I wanted to write a book that explained the difficulty of what it has meant to be a Black man and a Black father in this place called America, right? I wanted to explain how a Black father's complexity sometimes shows up in the way he is able to love or is unable to love. I also wanted to show that masculinity is messy, and masculinity and manhood have given weights unto Black men in ways that prove quite difficult when it comes our turn to really start, trying to show love and show emotion, especially to our own children. And and I really wanted to make sure that people knew that this road has been very, very, very difficult. And I wanted to hopefully plant some seeds of healing.
That you did, that you did. After I got done hugging the book, I wanted to go hug all the people that I had just put to the side for whatever reason. So that you definitely did. Let's talk a little bit about the ways you hit on what it is to be a Black man and to what is presented to us as a definition of masculinity and how we're supposed to carry it. Because you, throughout the book, you examine and you break down and you take apart this presentation of masculinity for us, which is what it looks like and how we're supposed to present it and the things that we're supposed to condemn in order to prove and to show and to maintain our masculinity, which is something I didn't understand growing up, and I struggled with so hard because I was the Isaac, and I didn't want to accept these things that present to me, but I knew I had to, because you say it very well throughout the book, because this is how we live. This is how we survive in America. So can you talk a bit about how you rip it to shreds, honestly, by the end? You have really taken apart this thing that was told to us that this is how we're supposed to be and shown us how we can be.
That's right. And the truth of the matter here is that one of the things that's very important is, prior to the time of integration, we might even say, we have to really understand that terms of masculinity were non-negotiable. One could not decide whether or not, as a boy, you were going to do it. You were going to do it, right? You were going to fight. So in fact, if you're not quite as old as I am, Julian, but if you know,
you don't know that.
That's true. Black adults prepared you to fight. They didn't wonder whether you would or not. They prepared you to do it. And in fact, if you weren't willing to do it and weren't willing to do it thoroughly, they would reprimand you themselves, not just the children in the streets. The parents would reprimand your unwillingness to perpetuate violence, right? It's a profound, profound thing, right? What's also true, right? What's absolutely also true is certain behaviors, certain masculinist behaviors in terms of how we treat girls, in terms of in terms of perpetuating ourselves as being non-emotive, etc. These were things boys were taught very, 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 very early. And there could be unbelievable consequences for a boy stepping out of the bounds of masculinity, right? And this is true, of course, in this book for Isaac. Jacob, who sees himself as the ultimate man, the irony is he births a boy who wants nothing to do with traditional notions of masculinity. And so, of course, Jacob's horror comes before his very eyes in his own house. And what really messes up Jacob is that he produces it himself. And he wonders, how the hell did this happen? Who is this child? And it's not until his dying day that he realizes, you don't only birth what you are. Parents, you don't only birth what you are. You birth human beings, and human beings come in possibilities, and human beings come in an array of difference. And you don't get to pick who they are. You simply get to decide if you want to have one, right? And it's a painful story, Julian. It's a very painful story. But the reason it's important to tell is because pain can't be skipped if it's going to be healed. It must be told, and it must be told as painfully as it is, right? It must be told as painfully as it is, and we must be willing to cry about it because it means something. These are human beings. These are people's hearts, right? We have to be willing to walk through the emotions that these pains engender because this costs somebody something. But what I'm really trying to show is it costs both the father and the son, right? Because by the end of this story, the father in many ways becomes the son, right? And he's asking Jacob for forgiveness, and he's asking Isaac, for forgiveness. And he's really coming before Isaac saying, I pray that you and I can reconnect. And I pray that what I've done has not ruined who we are. He's really asking Isaac to lead him, if you will, into the land of transformation, which is why also the father is Jacob and the son is Isaac, though biblically Isaac was the father, right? I turned that on its head in this book because I'm really trying to show how masculinity in many ways belittles even men. So yeah.
Wow. Woo! Oh goodness, so many layers. This book, it also, to understand Jacob, he takes us to the very beginning. And there are parts that you learn later that go even further to his beginning and who he is and whatnot. But to understand, because people like Jacob, you instantly want to hold this grudge against. But as you peel back these layers, you see that he's been through a lot of trauma. Whether it's personal, whether it's family, whether it's the trauma of the community. He's seen so much and had to do what is expected, what I've heard since I was younger, which is something I've had to fight so much now that I'm older, which is, and we're expected to carry on. And that's all Jacob does. It's just carry on and carry on. And you just said it, how he avoids the wounds that are there, because he's been taught that they're not there and they're not supposed to exist, whatnot. So can you talk a little bit about having to write about that? Because I think what readers are going to find is this is such a universal message. It is not just Jacob's message. It is not just the Black community's message, but it crosses so many different communities. So can you talk about what it was to put in that, and how did you, from the beginning, feel like I'm trying to tell this story of this one Black man, or did you know this is going to be something that crosses universally?
Julian, I didn't know it would, but I certainly hoped it would. My prayer was that it would, and even more than fathers and sons, but fathers and daughters, and even mothers and daughters. I'm really talking about the bridge between generations. And one of the things that happens, I think, in this book that I didn't really even see myself, Julie, until I began to write it, and that is the ways in which Jacob cannot conceive of Isaac's freedom. That's the real issue, that Jacob knows limitations. Jacob knows boundaries. Jacob knows obedience. Isaac was born into a world where he's invited to be creative. He's invited to imagine. Isaac is invited not to be hindered, if you will, by his inheritance. Isaac is invited to think of himself fully and completely as a human being. Jacob was trained to understand himself as a servant. And so when Jacob comes along and births a son who's that free, he's almost insulted. Like, how dare you think that as a Black boy, you get to prance around this damn world, right? As if you owe no one anything, as if you don't have to bow down, as if you don't have to genuflect, to cultural norms. And of course, Isaac is in his head and his heart, he's like, I don't. Right. Like, why would I do that? Right? And Jacob is really thinking, this is the way we survived. this is how we lived. We lived by being obedient. We lived by doing what we were told. We lived by obeying laws. And it's like, who is this child who comes along and seemingly has no care for limitations, seemingly has no notion of boundaries, right? Though it was Jacob's dream to live that way,
Mhm.
right? That's the irony, I think, of this text. But I think the beauty and the joy of it too is really realizing that some of what one generation dreams for the next generation, right, will be also their critique for them.
Oh God. Ooh. Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
And it is so true how we hope for so many great things for the next generation. But then when it comes to pass, when it
absolutely.
happens for them,
Oh my God.
we're unable to look past our own envy, our own
Oh, absolutely.
we can't get past those things. And so,
We
like
can't
you
do
said,
it. That's
we
right.
just we're constantly critiquing. Well, if you wouldn't have it this easy if this and this and whatnot. Well,
That's
this is
right.
what we wanted for them, but
That's right.
when they get it, we
That's
want
right.
to take it away from them in some way.
That's right. I remember my parents telling me, get education, get as much education as you can get it. But when I got it, I would use vocabulary words, or I would challenge certain things. And they would say, you just think you smart. Well, isn't that what you sent me to do?
Right. This is
Right.
what you wanted from me.
Right.
Oh gosh. So there's a lot of, like I said, a lot of trauma that happens, and I won't give too much away because y'all have to read it. Because I could talk about how that first half of the book was nothing but tears. Because I just felt like it's just thing after thing happened to Jacob. But there is joy in this book that I want to talk about also. There are moments where you shine another light on what it is to live as a Black person, and to find that joy, and to love who you are. And that's moments like when he's cooking with his grandmother in the kitchen. Oh my gosh, that moment right there spoke to me. You could have wrote another 5
Absolutely.
chapters
Absolutely.
because it spoke to me. The moment where he dances with Isaac later on, and they do the Soul Train line, and even further into the book when he's reconciling with his wife Rachel, and he's telling the stories of the people that came into the church. Why was it important for you to break up this book with those moments to show how joyful our community is, how joyful, how many few moments Jacob had, but he had them in his lifetime that he could talk about them through these letters?
Well, even the devil was an angel once. Right. And so I think it's very important for us to know and to understand that Jacob, although he struggles, he does try. And sometimes in those tries, he is successful, right, in terms of acknowledging his son's gift, in terms of loving his son. And it's important to understand that regardless of how bad a person's life is, how difficult a person's life is, there is joy somewhere. And sometimes our job is to find it, right? There is joy somewhere. And we have to find it. Our mission in life has got to be to find those spaces of joy and to hold on to them for dear life. And again, even parents who struggled, right? Even those parents who struggled, they still tried. And we have to acknowledge that, because all you got to do is become a parent and you'll see how difficult it is to be perfect all the time.
Right. And Jacob isn't. And the ways that he acknowledges, sometimes in the moment, he's aware, no, this is not the way I should go about it.
That's right.
But he still carries so much of
right.
what he's learned, and that's
Man.
so hard to break away from.
Yes, it is. It is. And Jacob also has a hard time breaking away from the emotional difficulty of his own grandfather,
Yes.
right, who raised him,
Yes.
right? And Jacob grows up believing a Black child is not supposed to have joy. You're supposed to have obedience. You're supposed to do what you're told. You're supposed to eat. You're supposed to have shelter. The notion of whether you have joy in your heart, that's for white kids. That's not for Black children.
Right.
Black children, you're supposed to be provided for. You're not supposed to be entertained. Where'd you get that from, child?
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Yes. And another thing that, it hurt my heart, but it was such an honest moment was, and I hope I'm not spoiling too much, but it's when Jacob loses his brother
Oh,
and he's told he's not to cry. And we grow up with that as, especially as Black boys and as Black men, we grow up with this notion that we are not to cry. You are not, that is not part of what you're supposed to do. You are supposed to be the strong one, and you are supposed to be one everyone else is leaning on and carry on. And Jacob, he's so young when this happens too.
so young.
It's not,
Right.
it's not like this happened when he was an adult and he was married and had Isaac. He was young. And this is what we implement into children sometimes. This is what you're supposed to do when you're older, instead of letting us enjoy the childhood that we are experiencing. So can you talk a little bit about that generational expectation that we carry?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And in fact, Jacob loves his brother dearly. He practically worships him.
Yes.
He just loves the boy. And in fact, ironically, Jacob's love for Isaac it's a bit homosocial, actually, I would argue, right? And the irony is he loves him so dearly that it's the only measure he has potentially of the reason why and how his son might love a boy, because he loves his brother so intimately. It's just not sexual, right? But the other thing that I think is so interesting about this, that when his brother dies, no one grants him permission to miss him. No one grants him permission to grieve. No, in fact, his father says, "You're on your own now." That's what his grandfather tells him, right? But an emotional weight that heavy and that overwhelming, Jacob has carried his entire life. He's never really wept for his brother because he felt that if he did, he would be so overwhelmed that he would be reprimanded. He'd get a whooping.
Right.
Crying and wailing like that. Why? Because only sissies do that. He cried once over a puppy and almost got in trouble. So as a 15, 16-year-old boy, to bury his own brother and to fear that he would collapse. So in exchange, he does nothing.
Right.
And what it's really saying here is, as a man, you're not supposed to feel. You're supposed to act. The problem with that is then when you marry a woman, when you have kids, they don't want a performance. They want a human being, right? And not even them, as Isaac is going to show later, even if you grow up and marry a man, masculinity still informs and infuses itself into those spaces, And I'm just going to reveal that I'm halfway through Isaac's response. It's Julian. I'm really seriously, it's slaying me. And it's literally killing me. I don't want to give anything away except to say Isaac takes the same form for reasons. He writes his father a series of letters.
It's one thing to ask for forgiveness. It's another thing to be the person who has to grant that forgiveness. And I can't imagine that emotional toll.
Oh my gosh.
But let's talk about a little bit about that, though, which is not necessarily Isaac's story, but it's a craft question, because as a writer,
yes,
I could not imagine what it's like to write a story all in letter form, because you're telling it in an even more intimate way.
That's right.
Because you're so deep into someone's thoughts and what's going on. We're not worried about the set, dressing the set and making it look pretty and everything.
That's right.
It is so much about what Jacob says, what he hears, what he experiences.
Right.
What was that like for you? How was it an emotional journey for you, or was it something? Did it make it easier for you to tell this story?
Let me say this: that epistolary form, brother, that epistolary form ain't nothing to play with. It offers amazing possibilities, but it has unbelievable limitations one has to dance around because it so limits your point of view.
Yes.
Right. And so to weave a story into such a narrow space proved far more difficult than I believed. I had read a novel that used epistolary form, and it was so lyrically beautiful. I said, maybe I'll try this form. Right. and I said, and after I got halfway, I said, maybe she just has, a mastery of craft that I just haven't possessed yet. And I almost gave it up. I really did, because it was just gruelingly difficult. It really, really was. But what I loved so much is the depth that it offered in terms of Jacob's heart. Right? It was hell in terms of telling other pieces of stories to make a full, complete narrative. But it gave me such a mirror into Jacob's heart that I just couldn't let it go. But it was absolutely challenging as a stylistic form, for sure. For sure. It was a beast. It really was a beast. And now
things Julian won't be doing in the future. But I mean, I have to tell you.
Man, but as Isaac now is responding to him, the form is still a beast, but it's letting Isaac say some things he never got a chance to say. And I just could not possibly have dreamed this son's response. I just couldn't have dreamed it.
I'm looking forward to okay, so another thing the book explores, Jacob kind of walks through life because of what his granddad taught him, because of what the elders and adults around him have taught him. He kind of walks through life like he knows it. Like he knows what he's supposed to be doing, and he knows how he's supposed to act. He knows how he's supposed to father, and he knows how he's supposed to, navigate and move through the world. And later on, as he finds out, he doesn't. He's not as knowledgeable as he thinks he is. Whether it's because of the education that was given to him that he didn't always get a chance to take advantage of, because he was expected to be at home and working and whatnot, whether it's because of his own choice, or the things that he valued and whatnot, eventually he kind of gets his eyes open because he starts to read something he didn't do, something he couldn't do growing up and whatnot. And he reads things like The Color Purple. And he reads about Malcolm X. And he finds ways to connect with Rachel and whatnot, his wife, Rachel. Talk about how important that is, because I feel like that is something that still carries on through generations, where men are presented in this way where we don't read and we don't seek knowledge because we've been taught, and this is what we take in, and we think that is the knowledge, that is the gospel, that is how it's supposed to be done. And opening your eyes or opening yourself to something else and learning more really can change the narrative.
That's right. And Julian, I'm gonna take a risk, because you're my brother now and you're really pushing me. So I'm no, it's true. I'm being very serious, actually. But I love this. I really do. And the truth is, Julian, we keep making excuses for Black men's ignorant spaces. And I want us to discontinue doing that, and we do so by saying this phrase: they gave their best. But see, what I want us to do is, and it's true, it's very, very true, that many, many men and many, many women did give their best. It's really true. I'm trying to expand the capacity of our best. Right? And see, this is important because our ancestors, yours and mine, Julian, they knew that something was magical about reading. They knew that. They didn't know what it was because they couldn't read. But they knew that there was something magical about reading, which is why they fought, bled, and died for the opportunity to do it. Right? And what I'm saying, Jacob discovers that magic. Jacob discovers when he starts reading that he does not, and here's the thing he discovers, that the world as he knows it does not have to be the way he takes it. What reading does is it introduces you to the possibility that all of the world and that life is not only what you know.
Yes.
Reading introduces you to the notion that there is more world than you have imagined in your head. And when Jacob gets there, he realizes that there is space for his son on this planet. And in fact, we might actually need him. Right? But it takes reading to get him there, because the whole point of reading is to expand this moment's reality. Most people settle for what they see. They settle for what they know. They settle for what they understand. Reading invites you not to settle for what you know. Reading invites you to imagine a greater way. right? A greater thing, a greater capacity. And once Jacob gets to that place, he sees that his son and his wife have been doing this from the beginning. They just needed him to join them.
Mm. And and then that makes me think if it had happened just a few years sooner.
Oh, Julian.
The outcome, the change, the hesitation, the pain. Okay, let's not go there because then we're gonna have a whole therapy session about Julian. All right. So sliding away from Jacob for a second, because it's his story, but you tell a many a character story through his letters.
Yes, sir.
And I was amazed. I was in awe of it, because just when I thought you had introduced us to the full cast, there goes another story. There goes another point of pain, a point of joy, or just a point of Jacob looking at his wounds and acknowledging that they're there. And he didn't want to do that. Through all the story, all the side characters that you shared through it, was there one story that you told through Jacob? Now, I might be challenging you a bit, that you told through Jacob that you loved, that you could go on for pages telling that story, or was there one that you really struggled with because you knew going there was really going to open some eyes?
There is one. There's one that sticks out. I mean, this is an easy and a difficult question. It's easy because I know exactly which one it was. It's difficult because it was probably the most painful story in this book.
Mm-hmm.
But as I wrote it, it killed me. It killed me. Julian, it killed me, man. It really killed me. But I saw its literary function. And this is when Jacob packs his bags to go to Chicago. I mean, I don't want to cry, right? I'm trying, so I'm
that I know what you're talking. I know what you're talking about.
He packs his bags and he gets on the freeway and drives. And halfway, he's in such emotional turmoil in his head. He convinces himself that his son would not want to see him and that the rejection would be greater than the potential of Isaac's forgiveness. And so he gets off the freeway in Columbia, Missouri, and sits on the side of the road, smoking a cigarette. It was the hardest scene to write. Because I'm like, sir, you're halfway. Just go on. Just go on. Just take the risk, brother. But what it reveals is his heart is more fragile than his son's. Right? That's really what it reveals. That his heart is the most fragile heart of any character in this book. And when I wrote that, I literally just sat and tears just streamed my face because of this father who was trying but couldn't get there.
Mm-hmm. It was such a hard moment because you think about how many across the board have been halfway there.
Yes.
And couldn't follow through. Because the fear of rejection, fear of an apology not being accepted, the fear of not knowing how to truly mend these bridges.
That's right.
When the act alone, and you talked about at the beginning about how Jacob is such a man of action, that action alone
it would have been enough.
Yes.
In fact, I'm gonna just say one sentence, Julian, and I'm gonna have to leave this alone because I'm telling you, in a minute, I'm gonna lose it.
Mm-hmm.
When you see how Isaac responds to that scene, oh my God, Lord have mercy, to know that his daddy was on the way to him. Oh my God.
I'm not ready. Just a reminder, if you have questions, please drop in the QA. I'm about to hit those up, and we're gonna talk about the things that you guys want to know about this book.
Yes.
Please drop the questions because we could go all night. There are so many parts See, this is a disadvantage when you read a book and the audience may not have read it, because
That's right.
you want to just snatch up all these different
That's
spoilers
right,
and
man.
whatnot. Tell me what you was thinking when you did this. But I won't.
Oh my God.
I will leave my last question with this book is so much about healing. It is I went in thinking it was about forgiveness, but it is so much about healing, generational
That's right.
healing
That's
that
right.
that we need. It is a story of forgiveness. It is a story of empathy. It is the things that we carry through generations. But ultimately, it's a dying man trying to heal his son,
That's
trying
right.
to heal his legacy,
Right.
because he's already accepted his fate. He's already
That's right.
accepted
That's
where
right.
he's at. He's
That's right.
he's. If you'll learn at the beginning of the book, he's refusing treatment or anything.
That's right.
He's just ready to go.
That's right.
What do you hope children and sons and daughters and whatnot will get from this book? Because I would hope that we're passing this on to not just the parents, but we're passing it on to others to pick up and to understand, not just understand, but in hopes that they have a better future by understanding the ways that we could have done that.
Yes, yes, yes. You know, Julian, my one great hope for this book and my one great hope for the world and anyone who comes across this book is to know that healing not only is possible, but we must do it in order to be whole.
Mm.
We must do it. If not, you are sabotaging your destiny.
Mm.
We must do this. Healing will not go, that hurt won't go away. It won't disappear. You can't pray it away. Jesus will not take it. You've got to do the healing work. But here's the thing, Julian. The thing that's so profound, I think, is the healing could happen in one day.
Mm.
What we've carried a lifetime could be healed in one day. If fathers and sons could strip naked metaphorically and be unashamed of what we see.
Mhm.
Meaning, daddy, look at your children and say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. There is not a child on this planet who's not waiting for the parent to say it. And there's not a child on this planet who wouldn't say, I forgive you. Because we want the forgiveness, because what we want is our parents in our hearts. We don't want the battle. We're not trying to get rid of parents. We're trying to embrace them. But parents have got to swallow enough ego to say, I'm sorry. There are places I messed up. There are times when I wounded you and I know it. I'm so sorry. Oh God, forgive me. That right there would be enough for them to reach out their arms and a child to say, I've always, always, always wanted to hear you say that. Not because I was looking for you to be perfect. Not because of that. But because I wanted to know that you knew and it mattered to you that I hurt.
Mm.
I just needed to know it mattered. And in one day, we could heal what most of us have been carrying a lifetime. And I pray that this book will do that. Will invite us into that healing space. That's my prayer, brother.
Oh, I hope that is my hope too.
Yes, sir.
Oh gosh. All right. Not gonna get emotional. But if my parents would have just said that, ooh.
Julian, don't take Julian. Julian.
Okay.
If my parents had said that right there, oh gosh,
that it mattered. Oh, you're right. Because we don't want it's not about us seeing that you're imperfect.
That's not it.
It's so much about seeing that the hurt that I endured,
it mattered to you. Right. That's right.
Okay. I am gonna get some of these questions. And please feel free as I'm asking questions. If you have any, drop them in there. If you have any comments, I'm gonna just go with the first comment because it's not a question, but I support it. Dr. Black is looking good this evening. So William, Shout out to William for putting that out there, because we need that too. We
That's
need
right.
affirmations. We need to know these things.
Listen, I love Brother William for that. I think I know who that gentleman is. And he's one of the most remarkable men on this planet. I love that brother.
Thank you, William. Thank you. Next question is, this book reveals so much to so many in one book. Oh my gosh, to so many in one book. Yes, it does. Did the story itself reveal so much, or did you consciously lead us here?
Well, it's for me in terms of my writing process. The story does all the revelation. I never know what a story is going to do. I never know what it's going to say. I never know what character is going to say. I'm not one, though I wish I were. I'm not one who can outline a book, who can outline a story. I simply open my computer and I close my eyes and I hear voices and I start writing. I know what readers know from one page to the next. I'm as surprised as readers as I write, right? And so I never ever know what a character is going to do, how situation is going to be resolved. I never know it. I simply never know it. It simply comes. So the entire book is as much a revelation to me as it is to a reader. And so I think I'd say that first. And then the other thing that I would say is, because this is this epistolary form, the depth of Jacob's heart, I didn't know it when I started. I knew this man was going to write a letter. I did know that. I did not know all the nuances. I didn't know all the places he was going to go. I did not know all the truth he was going to tell, the ugliness about himself he was going to reveal, and the tender places in his heart, right, that he now wants his son to inherit. I did not know.
Mhm. Wow, that is, as someone who has to outline, because I'm just so rigorous, that is so inspiring to hear, that you can sit down and let the story tell you what is
Yeah.
supposed to happen instead of you
Yes.
trying to tell the story. That
Yes.
is, woo, needed to hear that today. What was next question is, what was the editing process like for this book? What letters didn't make? Oh yes, what letters didn't make it?
First of all, I am a grueling editor, right?
Mhm.
I'll edit a manuscript to death if I'm not careful, right? Um, in fact, I'm sure we're reading the 8th or 9th version of this story, right? So the editing process always, always, always happens, and it's always difficult for me. Um, what letters didn't make it into this narrative? The honest truth is that now I don't think I remember, because any letters I edited out, I would have done that in the first draft. So by the 7th, 8th draft, all of that's gone now. I still have it in my computer somewhere, but I don't remember what it was. The greater thing is what new letters got added,
Mm.
right, toward the end. And it's so ironic that you spoke of that time with Jacob and Grandma in the kitchen.
Oof.
That was probably the last thing I added.
Really?
Yes, 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 yes. But it was because I needed to know places where Jacob and Grandma shared intimacy,
Mhm.
right? Because as a woman, that would have happened in terms of a grandmother, I believed,
Oh yeah.
right? Um, and even I did not just bake in the cake, but the notion of how meticulously and excellently she does it, so
Mm.
that one understands also that Jacob's work ethic, Jacob's sense, his work ethic was not only from his grandfather. That was his grandmother's doing too, in many manifestations. So yeah, I added that last. Um, and there was one other thing I thought about adding that I didn't add at all, so it's probably irrelevant. So again, as I edited, I was really trying to make things sharp, and also initially, the letters were not in chronological order of Jacob's life, not initially. So some of them were out of sequence, and then so
Mhm.
I changed ordering, right? So I hope I got it right by now.
You did. You did, because it could be so easy for you to just give us all of his beginning in the beginning of the book,
Right.
but the things about his mother, the things that are revealed later on in the book.
Yes.
Oh, I loved how it came later because it just revealed even more about him.
Yeah.
So I think you nailed it. That order was great. I can't wait to see Isaac's order.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
The next question is, as a mother raising a Black son of my own and with community, how do I create this emotional safety and healing that you talk about? It's a loaded
It is. It is. It is.
question there because,
It's a
but
loaded
go ahead.
question. Yeah, it absolutely is a loaded question. But one of the things I would tell any single mother raising a son is find some trustworthy Black man, right? And insert him into your son's life as a necessity. We keep thinking that fathers are optional, and fathers are not optional. If a child doesn't have it, a child absolutely is going to miss something. Absolutely. Like mothers are not optional, but most of us in society already believe mothers are not optional. I want us to get clear that fathers are not optional either. This notion of trying to figure out how the mother can be the mother and the father of children, all we're doing is killing women. Right? That's not true. And there's got to be something, there is something that fathers bring that mothers don't bring, because there's something mothers bring that fathers don't bring. And it's not a contest, it's not a competition, right? It's a complementarity that pours into the wholeness and completeness of a child's life. So I would say find some really trustworthy brother, right? I'm not talking about, he does not have to be the mother's boyfriend. He does not have to be the mother's anything, right? But I think that having a man in a child's life is absolutely positively critical in terms of a child's development. Now, yes, one has to be careful in terms of adults and children. We get that, we understand that. It could be an uncle, it could be a grandfather, it could be a church member, whomever, whatever. But I think that's absolutely positively important.
This next one is a comment, and maybe depending on how much time I have, maybe the last one I get to read here. But it's not a question, but
Okay.
a statement.
All right.
This book initially was hard for me to connect to, but I kept reading, hoping the son would respond. Learning that you are working on the response of Isaac is worth me keeping this book close to my heart and embracing it from another perspective of healing.
Yes.
Hopefully, forgiveness will be the theme in the next book. Thank you.
Oh, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. And again, Isaac's response it's killing me.
I cannot imagine having to carry that.
Oh,
That's why when you said that you were writing, when I was like, boy, that the nerve of you to put that on yourself, to carry that.
man.
Because yeah, it's writing from the perspective of someone trying to forgive someone else. Woo.
My God.
Yes. Okay. I'm gonna throw this last one here because I this is really for me too.
Okay.
No pressure. No pressure.
Okay.
But with that response, how long before it will be released in publishing terms? Because we both know we can write a book today and it might be 5 years before all the stuff is done with it.
That's right.
So
It's not going to take that long. It's not.
Okay.
But my prayer, I'm probably halfway finished. So if I had 90 days, I could finish it.
Okay.
Yeah, because I have it in my spirit. But I'm teaching full time this semester, and so I'm grading papers and doing exams, and how all of that goes. So my guess is that I'll finish it over the summer, and I'm hoping you might get it next year.
Listen, everyone. We're gonna write down Daniel's information, find that publisher, and start emailing some people. Okay. If you're artists out there, go ahead and start getting your artwork ready for the cover. Get it all together so we can get this out here. Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it so much. Daniel, thank you so much for sharing this with me. This book, like I said, it has really forced me to look at a lot of things that I ignored and pushed aside for so long, because that's just how I was raised to do, to carry on. But this book is a necessity for not only our community, but I feel like everyone to have. So I deeply appreciate that so much. I will throw it back to Joe if wants to pop up back on screen there. But woo, this conversation. My goodness, I need to listen. When Isaac's story comes out, someone needs to email me. I need to be there for the whole thing.
Man, oh man, oh man. Man, you have no idea how much I've enjoyed talking to you, Julian. And seriously, just because the depth of this book, I just feel so connected to you now, brother. So, we definitely gonna stay in touch, brother.
Yes, we are. And not just because I want to clear your whole schedule so you can write. But yes, because I needed this so bad.
So did I. And to all of you out there, thank you for joining us. Really, thank you so much for joining us. I'm sure Joe was going to say that, but I wanted to say that from my heart to everybody.
Yes, thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Julian, for doing this. Reading the comments, I think everybody agrees this was truly spectacular. This is one of those events that we do that there's sort of like a magic around it, and we will talk about it for years later and try and replicate it, but it's probably not going to happen. Although I think we will try and do it when the sequel comes out, when we get Isaac's story. Bring Julian back and let you and Julian do discussion 2.0. Once again, I have dropped the order links in the chat if you'd like to pick up a copy of Don't Cry for Me from Eagle Eye Books or anywhere at your local independent bookstore. I also put our Eventbrite page over there. Click on that. You can see all of our upcoming events and sign up to get the Zoom links. Or if we are doing them outdoors here at the library, get tickets to come to our outdoor pavilion that we are setting up on our parking deck. Also, if you'd like to rewatch some of our old events, we do have a YouTube channel that we started since the pandemic began with all of our archived author events, as well as our art shows. So thank you all so much for coming, for listening to this discussion, for embracing diverse books, because representation truly matters. And I think we all need to realize that Black stories matter, and Black voices matter, and Black lives matter, and we need to embrace each other fully to really have a diverse and equal literary community. So I thank you all so much for coming this evening. We will see you all again very, very soon. Have a wonderful evening.